For years, the flight attendant believed her authority was untouchable, her word final, her power absolute. Every order went unchallenged, every slight dismissed. She decided who belonged in first class and who did not, until she targeted the wrong woman, a black passenger seated quietly, calm but watchful. A woman she assumed was powerless, just another face she could belittle. When silence didn't break her, she pushed harder. Words sharpened. Contempt deepened. And finally, her hand struck. Gasps filled the air. Cameras captured everything. She thought she'd corrected an easy target. She had assaulted the FAA administrator. Justice was coming. And unforgiving. Before we go any further, comment where in the world you are watching from, and make sure to subscribe, because tomorrow's story is one you don't want to miss. Naomi Carter stepped from the jet bridge into first class, her cream-colored suit crisp and professional against her white dress shirt. The familiar cabin smell, a mix of recycled air and leather seats, greeted her as she made her way to 2A. She placed her carry-on beneath the seat with practiced ease and offered a warm nod to her fellow passengers. Madison Hale stood at the front galley, her blonde hair pulled back in a perfect flight attendant bun. Her bright smile faltered for just a fraction when she spotted Naomi, like a light dimming. "Boarding pass, please," she said, her voice sharp and clinical, nothing like the sugary tone she'd used with the previous passengers. Naomi handed over her ticket without comment. She watched Madison's eyes narrow as they scanned the paper, checking and double-checking the seat assignment as if certain there must be some mistake. "Are you sure you're in first class?" Madison asked loudly enough for nearby passengers to hear. "Yes," Naomi replied simply, her voice steady. "2A, as shown on the boarding pass you're holding." A businessman across the aisle glanced up from his phone, then quickly looked away. An older woman, 2 rows ahead, turned slightly, her expression uncomfortable, before busying herself with a magazine. Madison's smile tightened. "Well, then." She handed back the boarding pass with 2 fingers, as if touching it too long might soil her hand. She turned immediately to the white gentleman in 2C, her entire demeanor transforming. "Can I get you anything before takeoff, sir? Water? A magazine?" "Water would be great, thanks," he said. "Of course! Right away!" Madison practically sang the words. Naomi settled into her seat, smoothing her slacks. She'd been in this position countless times before. The subtle shifts in tone, the selective service, the implied message that she didn't belong. Each microaggression was familiar, like reading from a well-worn script. The cabin filled steadily. Madison swept past multiple times, delivering waters and taking drink orders for after takeoff. She chatted warmly with other first-class passengers about their destinations and dinner plans. But whenever Naomi tried to catch her eye, Madison looked straight through her as if she were invisible. A young white woman in designer clothes was seated in 1D, directly in front of Naomi. "I'd love some water," she called out to Madison, who immediately materialized with a bottle and a glass of ice. "Here you are, miss, and I'll be back with champagne once we're in the air. Are you heading to D.C. for business or pleasure?" They chatted for several minutes while Naomi's throat grew increasingly dry. She made a mental note of the time, 2:47 p.m., and the way Madison's body language remained open and engaging with certain passengers while closing off completely to others. The captain's voice came over the intercom, smooth and professional. "Good afternoon, folks. This is Captain Reeves speaking. Welcome aboard Flight 2153 to Washington, D.C. We're looking at clear skies today with an on-time arrival of 5:35 p.m. Eastern. Flight time will be approximately 2 hours and 15 minutes. Flight attendants, please prepare for departure." As the safety demonstration began, Naomi noticed a middle-aged couple in coach watching Madison's selective attention pattern with knowing looks. The woman shook her head slightly, sharing a quiet moment of recognition with her husband. The engines rumbled to life, and the plane backed away from the gate. Naomi pulled out her phone one last time, typing a quick note with specific times and observations. She'd learned long ago to document everything, no matter how small. The slights added up, building a picture that was harder to dismiss. During takeoff, Naomi watched the ground fall away through her window, the familiar pressure pushing her back in her seat. Her mind drifted to similar flights, similar situations, the weight of having to remain composed while being treated as less than. It was exhausting, but she'd learned to channel that fatigue into determination. The plane leveled off, the seatbelt sign dinged off, and Madison emerged from the galley with her drink cart. She moved systematically through first class, offering champagne and wine with flourishing service to everyone except Naomi. When she passed 2A, she didn't even pause, continuing her cheerful banter with other passengers as if the seat were empty. Naomi's jaw tightened almost imperceptibly as she gazed out at the clouds below. She could feel the weight of the ignored drink service like a physical pressure, another small indignity piling onto the others. The sunlight streaming through her window highlighted the tight set of her shoulders, the careful way she held herself. Dignified, professional, and very much aware of every slight being delivered with a smile. Through the reflection in the window, she could see Madison's perfectly pressed uniform breeze past yet again. The flight attendant's practiced charm extending to everyone but her. The standard welcome drink, a basic courtesy of first-class service, remained conspicuously absent from Naomi's tray table, while other passengers sipped their beverages and settled in for the flight. The meal service began about an hour into the flight. The scent of warmed dinners filled the cabin as Madison wheeled the cart forward, her heels clicking against the aisle floor. She distributed white tablecloths with practiced efficiency, laying them out with crisp snaps, except for Naomi's tray table, which she bypassed entirely. Naomi cleared her throat softly. "Excuse me," she said, her voice carrying just enough to be heard. "I believe you missed my table." Madison's smile remained fixed as she turned. "Oh, did you want one?" She flicked a cloth onto Naomi's tray table, letting it land askew instead of properly placing it. The cart continued its progress, Madison cheerfully describing the menu options to other passengers in detail. When she finally reached Naomi's row, her tone shifted to clipped and businesslike. "Chicken or pasta?" "The chicken, please," Naomi replied evenly, maintaining eye contact. Madison's lips pressed into a thin line. She glanced at the remaining meals, then down the aisle toward Coach. "You know what? We might need to move your meal to the back." "I'm sorry?" Naomi's eyebrows rose slightly. "We need to make sure we have enough for paying customers," Madison said, emphasizing the word paying with a slight sneer. "I'm sure you understand." A few nearby passengers shifted uncomfortably in their seats. The businessman across the aisle suddenly became very interested in his phone. In row 1, the young woman in designer clothes twisted around to watch the exchange. "I am a paying customer," Naomi stated calmly. "And I'd like the meal I ordered, please." Madison's customer service mask cracked. Her eyes narrowed as she leaned in close to Naomi's seat, voice dropping to a harsh whisper. "Listen here, you uppity climber!" The slur slipped out between clenched teeth. Then, before Naomi could respond, Madison's hand flashed out, striking Naomi across the face with a sharp crack. The sound seemed to echo through the suddenly silent cabin. Gasps rippled through first class. The elderly couple from Coach, who had been walking toward the lavatory, froze mid-step. Phones appeared as if by magic. Their cameras aimed toward row 2. Naomi didn't cry out. She didn't jump up or retaliate. Her cheek stung fiercely, but her movements remained measured as she reached into her purse. She withdrew a leather wallet and opened it, revealing a federal badge and identification card. "You just struck the woman who regulates your entire airline," Naomi said, her voice clear and steady despite the red mark blooming across her cheek. Madison's face drained of color so quickly she swayed slightly. Her perfectly manicured hand flew to her mouth as the full impact of what she'd done, and to whom she'd done it, sank in. Footsteps pounded up the aisle as Captain Reeves rushed forward from the cockpit, his face ashen. He took in the scene, Madison's shocked stance, Naomi's reddened cheek, the badge still displayed, and the forest of phones recording everything. "Dr. Carter," he said, trying to project calm authority despite his obvious distress. "I cannot express how deeply—" "Captain," Naomi cut him off quietly. "Your flight attendant just committed assault. I trust you understand the severity of this situation." More passengers had turned around in their seats now, murmuring among themselves. The business traveler in 3C kept his phone steadily aimed at the confrontation, though he tried to be subtle about it. The elderly couple from coach had moved closer, the wife gripping her husband's arm as they watched with concerned expressions. "Yes, ma'am," Captain Reeves said, swallowing hard. "If we could just handle this with some discretion." "Discretion?" Naomi's voice remained level, but there was steel beneath the surface. "Your employee just struck a federal official in full view of dozens of witnesses. This isn't a matter for discretion, Captain." Madison stood frozen, her hands trembling slightly as she gripped the meal cart. The perfectly pressed uniform and immaculate makeup couldn't hide her growing panic as the magnitude of her actions began to sink in. "Please, everyone," Captain Reeves addressed the cabin, trying to regain control of the situation. "We ask for your cooperation in this sensitive matter. If we could all just remain calm and—" "I am perfectly calm, Captain," Naomi interrupted. She sat straight in her seat, one hand resting on her federal ID, her dignity intact despite the handprint still visible on her face. "Though I'm curious to hear how you plan to handle an assault that occurred under your command." The young woman in designer clothes was still twisted around in her seat, phone held high. The businessman, who had earlier avoided eye contact, now stared openly, his own phone recording surreptitiously in his lap. The elderly couple had taken up position near the bulkhead, bearing silent witness. Madison's carefully constructed facade had crumbled completely. She stared at Naomi with the stunned expression of someone who had just stepped off a cliff and was only now realizing there was nothing beneath her feet. Her perfectly manicured hands twisted together as the weight of her actions and their consequences began to settle over her like a heavy shroud. The tension in first class hung thick as fog. Madison retreated to the galley, the meal cart abandoned beside Naomi's row. After a few minutes of hushed discussion with the captain, she emerged with a forced smile, continuing the meal service as if nothing had happened. "Can I offer you another beverage?" Her voice was artificially bright as she addressed other passengers, though she wouldn't look directly at Naomi. Captain Reeves remained in the aisle, speaking in low tones into a phone handset. His forehead glistened with sweat under the cabin lights. "I assure you, Dr. Carter," he said between calls, "we're taking this very seriously. Corporate will handle everything appropriately once we land." Naomi's cheek still burned, but her voice remained steady. "And what exactly does handle mean, Captain?" He shifted uncomfortably. "We have procedures for passenger incidents." "This wasn't a passenger incident," Naomi cut in, keeping her tone measured but firm. "This was assault by your crew member. There's a significant difference." The captain excused himself and disappeared into the cockpit again. Through the thin walls, Naomi could hear fragments of his conversation. "Situation in first class. Yes, FAA administrator. Trying to contain. Need guidance. Mrs. Pennington," the elderly white woman beside Naomi, leaned over. "I saw the whole thing," she whispered. "That was completely unprovoked. I'd be happy to make a statement." "Thank you," Naomi replied quietly. "Please keep any recordings or notes safe. My office will need witness accounts." The businessman across the aisle caught her eye and gave a subtle nod, patting his phone pocket. Down in coach, the elderly black couple who had witnessed the slap remained standing near the galley, their presence a silent show of support. Captain Reeves emerged again, his expression carefully neutral. "I've spoken with our corporate office. They've advised that we maintain normal service for the remainder of the flight. Madison will continue her duties." "She assaulted me," Naomi stated flatly. "We understand your concern," he said, falling into practiced corporate phrasing. "But our priority is maintaining a calm cabin environment. We'll address everything properly after landing." Naomi's eyes narrowed slightly. "Maintaining calm by keeping my attacker serving drinks? That's an interesting interpretation of safety procedures, Captain." He cleared his throat. "Doctor." "Carter, I hope you'll cooperate with—" "I'm cooperating fully by remaining in my seat," she interrupted smoothly. "But don't mistake that for acceptance of this situation." As the captain retreated again, Naomi turned to the passengers around her. "If anyone recorded what happened," she said in a low, clear voice, "please preserve those videos. My office will need copies. You can send them directly to the FAA's Passenger Advocacy Division." Several heads nodded. The businessman who had been filming typed something into his phone, presumably noting the information. Madison continued her performative normalcy, though her hands shook slightly as she collected dishes. She practically sprinted past Naomi's row, avoiding eye contact. The junior flight attendant, Rosa, moved through the cabin with quiet efficiency, helping clear trays. As she passed Naomi's seat, her movement was so smooth that few would have noticed the small folded napkin that slipped from her hand into Naomi's palm. Naomi waited until Rosa had moved on before carefully unfolding the napkin under her tray table. Inside was a phone number, and beneath it 3 simple words written in neat handwriting. "I saw everything." She glanced up, catching Rosa's eye as the young woman worked in the galley. Something passed between them in that brief look. Understanding, solidarity, the weight of choosing right over easy. Rosa gave an almost imperceptible nod before returning to her duties. The cabin speakers crackled. "Flight attendants, prepare for arrival." Naomi tucked the napkin carefully into her jacket pocket as the seatbelt sign chimed on. Around her, passengers began closing tray tables and returning seats to their upright positions. The businessman across the aisle was still typing intently on his phone. Mrs. Pennington had pulled out a small notebook and was writing what looked like a detailed account of events. Madison made one final pass through the cabin, collecting remaining items with brittle cheer. "Trash or recyclables," she chirped to each row, her voice too high, too tight. When she reached Naomi's row, she seemed to stop breathing entirely, snatching the empty cup without a word and hurrying past. The elderly couple from coach had finally returned to their seats, but not before the wife had managed to slip Naomi a business card with their contact information. "We're retired," she had whispered. "We've got nothing to lose by speaking up." Through the windows, the city lights below grew larger as the plane began its descent. Naomi felt the napkin in her pocket, a small weight that somehow made her sit straighter. She could feel eyes on her from all directions, some concerned, some curious, some supportive. The cabin had become more than just a space. It was now a collection of witnesses, each one holding a piece of the truth that would need to be told. The plane banked gently, beginning its final approach. Madison stood in the galley, gripping a handhold, her perfect makeup unable to hide the fear in her eyes. Every few seconds, her gaze would dart to Naomi, then quickly away, like someone watching an approaching storm. The aircraft door swung open with a hydraulic hiss. Instead of the usual cheerful gate agents, a wall of dark uniforms filled the jet bridge. Airport security officers flanked a man in a crisp suit, whose face could have been carved from granite. His airline manager badge identified him as Brent Kincaid. Naomi rose from her seat, straightening her cream-colored jacket. The slap mark on her cheek had faded to a dull pink, but the sting lingered. Madison huddled near the forward galley, surrounded by other crew members like a protective cocoon. "Ms. Hale, please come with us," Kincaid said, his voice professionally flat. Two security officers moved to flank Madison, not as guards, but as shields. They guided her toward the jet bridge, creating a barrier between her and the passengers. Kincaid turned his attention to Naomi. "Dr. Carter, we'll need you to step aside for questioning about this incident." "Questioning?" Naomi's eyebrows rose slightly. "I believe you mean taking my statement about being assaulted by your employee." "Please follow me, ma'am." Kincaid gestured toward a side door near the gate. Behind her, passengers began gathering their belongings, but many lingered, watching the scene unfold. Deshaun Brooks, the businessman who had recorded the slap, stood in the aisle with his phone still in hand. "I have video of what happened," he called out. "She didn't do anything wrong." Kincaid barely glanced at him. "Sir, please proceed to baggage claim." Earl and Laverne Jackson pushed forward from coach, their dignified faces set with determination. "We saw everything," Earl stated firmly. "That young lady struck Dr. Carter without provocation." "Thank you, but we need all passengers to clear the gate area," Kincaid replied, waving them toward the terminal. Another security officer stepped forward, herding them along. Laverne turned back. "This isn't right," she said, her voice carrying years of seeing similar scenes. "This isn't right at all." The crowd thinned as passengers were directed away. Naomi found herself being led to a small office just off the gate area. The room held a metal table, 3 chairs, and fluorescent lights that made everything look harsh and clinical. A junior airline representative placed a form on the table. "If you could just fill this out, Dr. Carter, we can process this quickly." Naomi picked up the document and read it carefully. Her lips tightened. The pre-printed form described a passenger conduct incident, with boxes to check for disruptive behavior and non-compliance with crew instructions. "This form erases what actually happened," she said, placing it back on the table. "I will not sign a document that turns victim into perpetrator." "Dr. Carter," Kincaid leaned forward, his tone reasonable but firm, "we're trying to resolve this efficiently. The form is standard procedure. A flight attendant used a racial slur and struck me across the face," Naomi stated clearly. "That is what your form should reflect." Through the office window, she could see Madison being escorted through a staff door, still surrounded by her protective detail. The flight attendant glanced back once, her eyes darting nervously before she disappeared behind the door. "We have no verification of those claims," Kincaid said smoothly. "We do have reports of raised voices and disruption to service." "You have multiple witnesses and video evidence," Naomi countered. "Would you like me to call them back?" "We'll conduct a thorough investigation," he assured her, sliding the form forward again. "But for now, we need to document the basic incident." "The basic incident was assault," Naomi said firmly. "I will provide a detailed statement to that effect, but I will not sign a form that misrepresents what happened." The minutes ticked by. Kincaid made several phone calls, speaking in low tones about situation management and liability concerns. The junior representative kept offering water and bland reassurances about taking this seriously. Finally, after nearly an hour, Kincaid seemed to realize Naomi would not be swayed. "You're free to go, Dr. Carter. We'll be in touch regarding the investigation." Naomi stood, gathering her carry-on bag. "Yes, you will be. And so will my office." She walked through the now quiet terminal, her heels clicking against the polished floor. The late evening crowds had thinned, but a few travelers still waited at nearby gates. Some glanced up as she passed, then quickly looked away. Near the escalators to ground transportation, a man with a press badge suddenly stepped into her path. Microphone extended. "Dr. Carter!" Is it true you caused a disturbance on Flight 2857? Another reporter appeared, then another, questions overlapping. Did you refuse crew instructions? Were you combative with the flight attendant? Naomi kept walking, her face composed. Her hand slipped into her jacket pocket, fingers closing around Rose's folded napkin. The paper was soft now, worn from being held, but the words were still clear in her mind. I saw everything. She pressed the lobby button for the elevator to ground transportation, keeping her back straight and her expression neutral as cameras flashed behind her. The doors slid shut, finally giving her a moment of silence. She looked at her reflection in the polished steel, a professional woman in a cream-colored suit, standing tall despite the red mark on her cheek that told its own story. The elevator descended smoothly, and Naomi took a deep breath. In her pocket, the napkin remained clutched in her hand, a small reminder that even in moments engineered to make her doubt herself, she was not alone, and the truth had witnesses. Naomi's townhouse stood quiet in the Georgetown evening, its brick facade warmed by the setting sun. She clicked the door shut behind her, dropped her keys in the ceramic bowl by the entrance, and let her shoulders finally drop. The cream suit jacket, wrinkled from the long day, came off first. She hung it carefully, smoothing the fabric with hands that wanted to tremble, but wouldn't. The kitchen's familiar comfort welcomed her. Gleaming countertops, the soft hum of the refrigerator, her grandmother's cookies jar still perched in its place of honor. Naomi set her purse on the counter and poured herself a glass of water, ice cubes clinking against crystal. Her reflection caught in the window. The mark on her cheek had faded, but memory made it burn. The TV remote felt heavy in her hand. She knew what was coming, but pressed power anyway. The evening news filled the screen, the anchor's concerned expression already telling the story. Breaking news tonight. Allegations of disruption aboard Flight 2857, the anchor began. The carrier released a statement moments ago regarding an incident involving FAA Administrator Dr. Naomi Carter. The airline's statement appeared on screen, its carefully crafted words making Naomi's jaw tighten. We are investigating reports of a confrontational incident in first class. While we respect Dr. Carter's position, our crew members described her behavior as combative and non-compliant with safety instructions. The safety and comfort of all passengers remain our top priority. Combative, Naomi repeated softly, setting her glass down. The word hung in the air like smoke, toxic and spreading. She reached for her phone, scrolling to a number she hadn't needed to use in years. Janet? It's Naomi Carter. She kept her voice steady as her longtime counsel answered. I need you to prepare a formal federal investigation request. Yes, tonight. No, this can't wait until morning. For the next hour, they crafted the document together. Every word precise, every allegation backed by preliminary evidence. Not just the slap, the pattern, the buried complaints, the institutional response that turned victims into aggressors. Janet's keyboard clicked in the background as Naomi dictated details. Send me the final draft in 30 minutes, Naomi instructed. I'll sign it digitally, and we'll file first thing tomorrow. Next came the emails. She opened her laptop at the kitchen table, the familiar space now feeling like a war room. The first message went to Deshaun Brooks. Mr. Brooks, thank you for your courage today. Would you be willing to provide a formal statement and share any video evidence you captured? Your first-hand account could be crucial. To Earl and Laverne Jackson, Mr. and Mrs. Jackson, your voices matter deeply in this situation. I would be grateful for your written recollection of events, particularly regarding what you witnessed from Coach. She hesitated before composing the next one. Mrs. Pennington had stayed silent during the incident, but her seat location made her a key witness. Mrs. Pennington, I understand today's events may have been disturbing to witness. If you're willing, your perspective from first class would provide valuable context. Please consider sharing your account. The kitchen clock ticked steadily as Naomi worked. Outside, street lights flickered on. Cars passed occasionally, their headlights sweeping across her walls. The familiar sounds of her neighborhood continued while she built her case, one careful step at a time. Rosa's napkin sat before her, its creases soft from being folded and refolded. Naomi picked up her phone again, this time opening a text message. Ms. Alvarez, thank you for your bravery today. Would you be willing to meet tomorrow morning? There's a quiet diner, Marie's on K Street. 7 a.m.? We can talk privately there. The response came quickly. I'll be there. Naomi placed the napkin flat on the table, smoothing it with careful fingers. The phone number Rosa had written stood out clearly now, circled deliberately. Such a small piece of paper to carry such weight. The first crack in the airline's wall of denial. The laptop chimed with Janet's email. The investigation request ready for signature. Naomi read it one more time, each word a stone in the foundation she was building. Pattern and practice of discrimination. Failure to protect passengers. Retaliation against those who spoke up. Environmental factors enabling discriminatory behavior. She signed it digitally, watching her name appear at the bottom. In the morning, this document would land on desks throughout Washington, forcing eyes to open and hands to move. The kitchen had grown dark while she worked. Naomi switched on the under-cabinet lights, their warm glow pushing back the shadows. She made herself a cup of chamomile tea, adding a spoonful of honey. Her mother's remedy for difficult days. The napkin still lay on the table, Rosa's number a promise of truth to come. Naomi traced the circles with one finger, feeling the indentations where Rosa's pen had pressed hard, determinedly marking her stand against what she'd witnessed. Naomi released a long breath, one she felt she'd been holding since the moment of the slap. Then she straightened her spine, squared her shoulders, a posture learned from decades of being the only black woman in countless rooms. Morning couldn't arrive soon enough, but she would be ready when it came. She lifted her tea, breathed in its calming steam, and began mentally preparing for tomorrow's conversation. Rosa's testimony would be crucial, but first, Naomi had to ensure the young flight attendant understood she wouldn't face this storm alone. Marie's diner buzzed with early morning activity. The clink of coffee cups, the sizzle of bacon, the murmur of conversations over plates of eggs and toast. The vinyl booths, worn but clean, held a mix of regulars and business people starting their day. In a corner booth, Rosa Alvarez sat with perfect posture, her hands wrapped around a steaming mug of coffee she hadn't touched. A manila folder lay flat on the table before her, its edges aligned precisely with the tabletop. The bell above the door chimed. Dr. Naomi Carter entered, scanning the room with practiced ease. She wore a charcoal pantsuit today, her presence drawing a few curious glances from those who recognized her from the news. Rosa's shoulders tensed slightly, then relaxed as Naomi slid into the booth across from her. "Good morning, Ms. Alvarez," Naomi said quietly, signaling a waitress. "Thank you for coming early. Just Rosa, please." Her voice was steady but soft, pitched not to carry. "I ordered coffee already. They make it strong here." The waitress appeared with a fresh mug for Naomi. They waited until she moved away before continuing. "I have documents," Rosa said, her fingers brushing the folder. "Things I've been noticing, writing down, keeping track of." She glanced around the diner, then leaned forward slightly. Things that didn't feel right. Naomi wrapped her hands around her coffee mug, mirroring Rosa's posture. "Take your time. We're safe here." Rosa opened the folder carefully. Inside were several printed pages, some handwritten notes, and what looked like official airline forms. Her hands trembled slightly as she spread them out. "These are incident reports," she explained, pointing to a stack of nearly identical forms, from different flights, different crews. "But look at the language." She slid one across the table. "Every time there's a complaint from a passenger of color, the same phrases appear. Passenger became agitated. Demonstrated non-compliant behavior. Posed potential safety risk to crew." Naomi studied the forms, noting dates, flight numbers, crew signatures. The pattern was clear, too clear to be coincidental. "How long have you been collecting these?" 6 months. Rosa's voice strengthened. "At first, I thought I was imagining things. But then I started making copies, taking notes. The similarities were impossible to ignore." She pulled out a handwritten statement on airline stationery. The ink was still fresh, the words careful and precise. "I, Rosa Alvarez, witnessed Flight Attendant Madison Hale slap Dr. Naomi Carter during Flight 2857. Below were details: time, location, exact words exchanged. Every fact documented with the precision of someone who knew their words would be questioned. "I know what happens to people who speak up," Rosa said, her coffee still untouched. "My mother cleaned offices for 20 years. Every time she reported harassment, they found reasons to cut her hours, change her schedule, make her life harder until she quit." Naomi set down the papers and met Rosa's eyes directly. "I understand your fear. It's rational. They count on that fear to keep people silent." She paused, choosing her next words carefully. "I can protect your identity during the initial investigation. When we move to public hearings, and we will, I'll need you to testify. But by then, we'll have built enough momentum that retaliation would only prove our case." Rosa nodded slowly. "The crew talks, you know, about other incidents, about how they handle complaints." She pulled out more notes. Names, dates, patterns of behavior. "Madison, she's not an anomaly. She's a symptom of a culture that needs to change," Naomi finished. She took a sip of coffee, giving Rosa time to steady herself. "What we need next is a strategy. More witnesses, more documentation. Then we request a public hearing. Make it impossible to bury this in internal reviews and corporate speak." The diner had grown busier around them, the morning rush picking up. Rosa glanced at her watch. Her shift would start in 2 hours. "I made copies of everything," she said, sliding the folder across the table. "The originals are somewhere safe, just in case." "Smart," Naomi approved. She tucked the folder into her briefcase. "I'll have my team start verifying these incidents, reaching out to passengers discreetly. The more voices we have, the harder it becomes to dismiss any single one." They finished their coffee, Rosa finally taking a sip of her now cold cup, and discussed specific next steps. Naomi provided a secure email address and a private phone number. They agreed on code words for urgent messages, backup meeting locations, and a chain of communication that would protect Rosa's involvement. The morning sun had risen fully when they finally stood to leave. Rosa smoothed her uniform skirt, preparing to head to the airport. Naomi left cash on the table. Better than a credit card trail. They stepped out onto the sidewalk together, the city fully awake now. Business people hurried past with phones to their ears. A delivery truck rumbled by. Normal morning sounds that felt somehow different after their conversation. Rosa turned to Naomi, hesitated for just a moment, then reached for her hand. Her grip was firm, certain. "I'm in," she said simply. Naomi nodded, squeezing Rosa's hand once before letting go. She patted her briefcase where the folder sat securely, then turned toward her office. The morning traffic parted around them as they went their separate ways, each carrying a piece of the truth they would soon bring to light. The Waterfront Hotel's lounge settled into its evening quiet. Soft jazz, amber lighting, and the occasional clink of glasses creating a bubble of privacy. Heavy curtains filtered the setting sun, casting long shadows across empty tables. At precisely 7, Naomi Carter sat alone at a corner table, her back to the wall, a single glass of water untouched before her. Madison Hale entered like someone expecting an ambush. Her uniform was gone, replaced by dark jeans and a cream sweater that made her look younger, more vulnerable. Her eyes darted around the lounge, checking exits, looking for hidden cameras or waiting reporters. Finding none, she approached Naomi's table with short, stiff steps. "Sit down, Miss Hale," Naomi said quietly, gesturing to the chair across from her. "Would you like something to drink?" Madison shook her head, perching on the edge of the seat, her hands twisted in her lap. "My uncle says I shouldn't be here. That talking to you is a mistake." "Your Uncle Victor Hale," Naomi said, not a question. "Board member, major stockholder, and the man who's been covering your credit card bills for the past 3 years. Color drained from Madison's face. She started to stand, but Naomi's next words froze her in place. "Including the emergency withdrawal from your 401k last month. The one that somehow disappeared from your employment record the day after the incident. How did you—" Madison's voice cracked. She sank back into her chair. "I'm very good at my job, Ms. Hale." Naomi's tone remained measured, almost gentle. "Just as you were very good at yours, until you weren't. Tell me about the passenger complaints, the ones that vanish into thin air." Madison's fingers drummed against her thigh. "I don't know what you mean." Naomi reached into her briefcase and withdrew a thin stack of papers. She laid them on the table one by one, like dealing cards. "Flight 23117, 3 months ago. Flight 898, last summer. Flight 1442, just before Christmas." Each paper showed a complaint form, each one eerily similar in language and structure. "These aren't real incidents," Madison protested weakly. "They're just standard forms for difficult passengers." "Difficult passengers who all happen to be people of color?" Naomi raised an eyebrow. "Who all supposedly became agitated and non-compliant in exactly the same way? Who all disappeared from the system after your uncle's office got involved?" A waiter approached their table. Naomi waved him away with a small shake of her head. In the silence that followed, Madison's breathing grew uneven. "Look at me, Madison," Naomi said softly. "Really look. What did you see that day on the plane? What made you think you could strike a passenger, any passenger, and walk away clean? I didn't." Madison swallowed hard. "You weren't supposed to be— I didn't know who you were. Would it have mattered? If I'd been a teacher, or a nurse, or anyone else, would that have made the slap okay?" Tears welled in Madison's eyes. "They told us. There's a way things work. First class has a certain image. When passengers don't fit that image, we're supposed to maintain standards." "Who told you this?" Naomi pressed. "When? How?" "Training sessions, not the official ones. The real ones. After hours." Madison's words came faster now, tumbling out. "Uncle Victor said first class is about comfort. That means making sure certain passengers feel special, protected, and others feel unwelcome." Naomi leaned forward slightly. "And when those others complain, there's a system." Madison wiped her eyes with trembling fingers. "Code words in the reports. Ways to flag certain incidents for special handling. The complaints go straight to legal, then to Victor's office. They never reach the FAA. "Until now," Naomi said quietly. Madison's face crumpled. "They'll destroy me. Uncle Victor, he owns me. The loans, the credit cards, my apartment lease. Everything. I'm not here to destroy you, Madison." Naomi's voice remained steady. "I'm here to end the system that made you think you could slap me. The culture that taught you some passengers belong and others don't. You can help me do that. Or you can go down with them." "Help how?" Madison whispered. "Tell the truth. Sign a statement about what happened on that flight. Name names. Show me the real training materials. And when the time comes, testify. They'll fire me. They'll try, Naomi acknowledged. But if you help me now, fully, honestly, I'll protect you. Not your job. That's gone. But your future? Your chance to make this right? That I can preserve. Madison stared at her hands for a long moment. The lounge had emptied around them, leaving their corner in deeper shadow. Finally, she looked up. What do you need me to write? Naomi produced a single sheet of paper and a pen. The truth. Simple and clear. What you did, and why you thought you could do it. With shaking fingers, Madison took the pen. Her handwriting was unsteady but legible. I, Madison Hale, struck Dr. Naomi Carter during Flight 2857. I was supported by supervisors and training that told me she did not belong in first class. This culture of discrimination exists throughout our airline. When she finished, Naomi took the statement and tucked it carefully into her briefcase. She withdrew a business card and placed it on the table between them. Call me tonight, she said, standing. Tell me every name, every meeting, every instruction. Leave nothing out. Madison picked up the card, holding it like it might shatter. What happens tomorrow? Tomorrow, Naomi said, we start dismantling the machine, one truth at a time. Late afternoon sun slanted through Naomi's office windows, casting long shadows across her desk. She adjusted her phone's speaker and listened intently as Deshaun Brooks described the video he'd captured. I started recording when I heard her tone with you, Deshaun explained. Something felt off from the start. The way she kept checking your ticket, hovering around your seat. My mom always taught me, when something's not right, document it. Naomi nodded, though he couldn't see her. And you have a clear shot of the actual incident? Crystal clear. You can see her lean in, hear what she says, and watch the slap plain as day. I even caught some passengers' reactions. The shock on their faces tells the whole story. Would you be willing to testify about what you witnessed? Naomi asked, making notes in precise handwriting. Absolutely, Deshaun replied firmly. They tried to pressure me to delete it, you know. A supervisor came to my seat after landing, said it would be better for everyone if the video disappeared. Made me more determined to keep it. After arranging for Deshaun to send the footage securely, Naomi dialed Earl and Laverne Jackson. Their steady voices filled her office as they took turns describing what they'd seen from their seats in coach. We've flown enough years to know what we were watching, Earl said gravely. The way that young woman treated you. It wasn't new to us, just bolder than usual. Laverne added, when she hit you, Earl started to stand up. I had to hold his arm. Not because he was wrong, mind you, but we've learned the hard way. They're always ready to paint us as the aggressors. Your testimony would be invaluable, Naomi told them. Your perspective as longtime travelers who've experienced this pattern firsthand. Count on us, Earl assured her. We're done being quiet about these things. The call with Mrs. Pennington proved surprisingly productive. The elderly woman's voice trembled with emotion as she spoke. I should have said something right then and there, she admitted. I was sitting right next to you. I saw everything. The rudeness, the checking your ticket twice, the terrible things she whispered. When she struck you, Mrs. Pennington paused, collecting herself. I was raised to believe that speaking up in public was unseemly. But my silence that day, that was what was truly unseemly. It's not too late to speak up now, Naomi encouraged her. No, it isn't, Mrs. Pennington agreed firmly. I've written down everything I witnessed, every detail I can remember. I want to testify. It's the least I can do to make this right. Between calls, Naomi's office phone lit up with messages from her legal team. Senator Cole's office had confirmed. There would be a public hearing within weeks. The senator wanted to examine not just the incident itself, but the airline's broader pattern of passenger discrimination and complaint suppression. As sunset painted the sky outside her window, Naomi's cell phone buzzed. Madison's number flashed on the screen. "I'm ready," Madison said quietly, her voice barely above a whisper. "To tell you everything?" "Take your time," Naomi replied, opening a fresh page in her notebook. "Start from the beginning." Madison's words came slowly at first, then faster as the dam broke. She described after-hours training sessions in empty airport conference rooms, supervisors teaching new flight attendants to spot problem passengers and maintain cabin harmony, code words for profiling and discrimination. "They gave us a manual," Madison continued, "not the official one, a different one. It had specific phrases to use in incident reports, ways to describe passengers that would trigger special handling. The reports would go straight to Victor's office, marked for executive review." Naomi's pen moved steadily across the page as Madison named names: supervisors, trainers, executives who oversaw the system. She detailed how complaints disappeared, how crew members were rewarded for maintaining standards, how Uncle Victor's influence protected those who played along. "The worst part," Madison admitted, her voice cracking, "is how normal it all seemed. They made it sound professional, necessary, like we were protecting our premium passengers' experience. But we were hurting people, making them feel small, making them prove they belonged." "You're doing the right thing now," Naomi assured her, underlining another name in her notes. "I know it doesn't make up for what I did to you, but I want to help fix this. I want to tell the truth. All of it." After the call ended, Naomi reviewed her notes in the gathering darkness. Names, dates, locations, a web of coordinated discrimination laid bare in black ink. She circled key details: the secret training manual, the coded report language, the chain of command that buried complaints. The pieces were falling into place. Deshawn's video would show the violence that lurked beneath the airline's polished surface. The Jacksons would testify to the pattern of mistreatment. Mrs. Pennington would confirm the immediate events. And Madison's insider account would expose the systematic nature of it all. Naomi flipped through the pages one last time, making sure every detail was captured. The notebook contained more than just evidence. It held the power to force real change, to ensure no other passenger would be humiliated, struck, or made to feel they didn't belong. She stood and gathered her things, tucking the notebook securely into her briefcase. Her office had grown dark, lit only by the faint glow of her desk lamp. With a quiet click, she turned off the light and stepped into the brightly lit hallway. The morning sun hadn't yet cleared the trees when Naomi's phone erupted with notifications. She reached for it, still groggy, then sat bolt upright as headlines flashed across her screen. FAA administrator caught on tape threatening flight attendant. Abuse of power? Federal official bullies airline employee. Exclusive. Shocking video shows. Dr. Carter's hotel intimidation. Her hands trembled slightly as she clicked the first link. A grainy video played, clearly filmed secretly at the hotel lounge. The clip showed only fragments of their conversation, cut and rearranged to paint a damning picture. "You'll go down," her voice said flatly. "Please, I have debts," Madison pleaded. "Sign this now, or else." Naomi's stomach clenched. She recognized the phrases, all real moments from their meeting, but stripped of context and spliced together to create something sinister. The camera angle caught Madison's fearful expression, but missed Naomi's compassionate one. The edited footage ended before Madison's voluntary confession, before their shared commitment to exposing the truth. Her landline rang. The agency's chief of staff, Thomas Wheeler, spoke with careful formality. "Dr. Carter, I'm sure you've seen the news. Given the serious nature of these allegations, We need to place you on administrative leave effective immediately, pending a full review. Thomas, that video is deliberately misleading. I understand your position, he cut in. But we have to follow protocol. Please clear your calendar and await further instruction. No public statements without clearing them through channels. She set the phone down as her television flickered to life. Victor Hale's polished face filled the screen, standing at a podium with Madison partially hidden behind him. His voice oozed concern. As a board member and Madison's uncle, I was horrified to learn of this intimidation. Dr. Carter abused her position to threaten a young woman who was simply doing her job. We demand a full investigation into this gross misconduct. Madison stood silent, eyes downcast. Gone was the woman who'd bravely confessed her part in the discrimination. This Madison looked beaten, controlled. Naomi's phone buzzed with a text from Rosa. Just saw the news. Don't worry, I'm still with you. They can't edit what I saw with my own eyes. She tried calling Madison, but the line went straight to voicemail. Again. The fourth time, an automated message stated the number was no longer in service. Talking heads filled every channel, dissecting the video frame by frame. Some questioned why a federal official was meeting privately with an employee she was investigating. Others suggested Naomi had orchestrated the whole incident to grab power. A few openly wondered if she should face criminal charges. Sources say Dr. Carter has a history of targeting airlines with aggressive investigations, one pundit declared. This video proves she's willing to destroy careers to push her agenda. Naomi muted the television, her living room suddenly too quiet. The silence felt heavy, accusatory. She walked to her kitchen window, watching leaves scatter across her small backyard. Everything she'd built, her reputation, her authority, her ability to create change, seemed to be crumbling in real time. Her phone lit up again. Deshaun Brooks this time. They're trying to pressure me to withhold my video, saying it could hurt Madison. I won't back down. Earl and Laverne left a voicemail. We're praying for you, Dr. Carter. Truth will prevail. Mrs. Pennington sent a short email. I know what I saw that day. No edited video can change that. Naomi's hands stopped shaking. She straightened her shoulders, remembering every slight, every dismissal, every moment of forced silence she'd endured throughout her career. They thought they could bury her with selective editing and coordinated attacks. They thought she would retreat, apologize, fade away. They were wrong. She picked up her phone and dialed her attorney, Linda Marshall. The line clicked after one ring. I saw, Linda said without preamble. Pretty clever editing job. They must have had someone filming the whole time. They think they can scare me into backing down, Naomi replied, her voice steady. Into doubting myself. What do you want to do? Naomi walked to her desk, where her notebook lay open to the pages of testimony and evidence she'd gathered. Rosa's statement, Deshaun's video agreement, the Jacksons' account, Mrs. Pennington's written testimony, Madison's original unedited confession. We don't run, Naomi said firmly. We show everything. Every recording, every statement, every piece of evidence that proves what really happened, both on that plane and in that hotel. They'll fight back harder, Linda warned. Victor Hale has deep pockets and lots of friends. Let them come, Naomi replied. I've spent my whole career watching people like them twist the truth, silence victims, and walk away clean. Not this time. She looked at her reflection in the window, poised, determined, unbroken. The same way she'd looked after Madison's slap, after the airline's attempt to detain her, after every attempt to make her doubt herself. Set up a press conference, she told Linda. Simple, straightforward. No hiding, no apologizing. Just me, speaking truth to power. When? Tomorrow morning. The courthouse steps. Let them see me standing in the light. The fluorescent lights hummed softly in the small conference room as Naomi settled into a worn leather chair. Linda Marshall spread documents across the table, steam rising from 2 paper cups of coffee between them. The morning paper lay folded nearby, its headlines still screaming about scandal and corruption. "First things first," Linda said, pulling out a thick manila folder. "We need to dissect their edited video piece by piece. Show exactly how they manipulated your conversation." Naomi nodded, taking a sip of coffee. "I recorded the entire meeting myself. Standard procedure for any investigative contact." Linda's eyebrows rose. "They don't know that?" Victor Hale was so focused on his secret recording, he never considered I might be protecting myself too. Naomi reached into her briefcase and withdrew a small digital recorder. Everything from the moment Madison walked in until she left. Clear audio, no cuts, no edits. Linda pressed play. Madison's nervous entrance filled the room, followed by Naomi's calm greeting. The conversation unfolded naturally, Naomi laying out the evidence of discrimination, offering protection in exchange for truth. Madison's gradual shift from fear to relief as she realized she had a way out. "This changes everything," Linda said, making notes. "When people hear the full context, how you gave her a chance to do the right thing, how you promised to shield her from retaliation, it completely destroys their narrative." "We'll need more than just the recording," Naomi replied. She pulled out her notebook, flipping to her witness list. Deshaun Brooks's video of the original incident, the Jacksons' testimony about what they saw, Mrs. Pennington's statement about Madison's behavior throughout the flight, and Rosa's documentation of similar incidents. Linda nodded, writing rapidly. "I'll draft subpoena requests for the airline's internal communications about the incident, and their procedures for handling discrimination complaints. We need to show this wasn't just about one slap. It was about a system designed to silence people." They spent the next hour mapping out their strategy. Linda prepared formal requests for every piece of evidence they'd need: flight manifests, crew reports, passenger complaints, training materials. Naomi called each witness, giving them specific times to arrive and detailed lists of what documents to bring. "Mrs. Jackson," she said warmly into her phone, "we need you and Earl there at 9 a.m. sharp. Bring your boarding passes, any notes you took that day, and your cell phones in case you took pictures." She paused, listening. "Yes, ma'am, I know it's intimidating. But your voice matters. They're counting on good people staying quiet." Deshaun Brooks was next. "Make sure that video is backed up in multiple places," she advised. "And bring any emails or messages you received trying to pressure you to delete it." Mrs. Pennington sounded anxious but resolute. "I should have spoken up sooner on the plane," she said. "I won't be silent now." Rosa sent a text confirming she had all her documentation ready. Crew schedules, incident reports, training materials showing the airline's standard responses to passenger complaints. As the morning wore on, Linda drafted a series of motions to protect their witnesses from retaliation. "The airline will try to pressure them," she warned, "especially Rosa. We need to build a legal wall around her." "Already done," Naomi replied. "I filed whistleblower protection paperwork for her last week, and I've documented every contact we've had, so they can't claim I improperly influenced her testimony." They moved to the press strategy. Naomi knew the airline would flood the media with spokespeople, trying to drown out her message with complexity and confusion. She needed something clear and powerful. "Keep it simple," Linda advised. "One strong statement that cuts through their noise." Naomi stood, smoothing her jacket. Linda held up her phone to record. "I will not be silenced," Naomi said, her voice steady and clear. "I will bring the truth to light." Linda played it back. "Perfect. Direct, dignified, determined, just like you. They were reviewing their timeline when Linda's phone buzzed. She answered, listened briefly, then looked up at Naomi with a slight smile. Senator Cole's office. The hearing is set for next Tuesday at 10 a.m. Transportation Committee chamber. Naomi walked to the window, looking out at the city below. Morning traffic flowed past, people hurrying to their own battles, their own moments of truth. She thought of Madison, probably sitting in some corporate office right now, being coached on what to say. She thought of Victor Hale, so sure his money and influence could bury this story. "Let them come," she said quietly, her reflection strong and clear in the glass. Let them bring their edited videos and practiced statements and corporate lawyers. Truth doesn't need editing. Linda gathered their papers into neat stacks. We should prepare for their counterattacks. They'll try to paint you as angry, aggressive, unstable. They've been doing that to women like me our whole lives, Naomi replied, turning back to the table. But I'm not here to fight their stereotype. I'm here to fight their system. She sat down, pulling the witness lists close. Let's go through everyone's testimony again. I want to make sure we're not missing anything. The conference room settled into focused quiet, broken only by the scratch of pens and rustle of papers. Outside, the city moved on, unaware that in this modest room, a small group of determined people was carefully, methodically, building a case that would force it to stop and pay attention. A crisp breeze swept across the Capitol steps as the sun painted the marble columns in soft morning light. News vans lined the street, their satellite dishes reaching toward the pale sky. A line of people wrapped around the building, some clutching papers, others checking their phones nervously. Naomi Carter walked up the steps, her dark charcoal suit sharp against the white stone. Her heels clicked steadily on the marble, each step purposeful and measured. She'd chosen a deep purple blouse beneath the suit jacket, dignified but unapologetic. Her silver hair caught the light as she approached the entrance. Rosa Alvarez stood near the security checkpoint, hands clasped tightly around her purse. When she saw Naomi, her shoulders relaxed slightly. Naomi gave her a small nod, their private signal that everything was proceeding as planned. Rosa's navy blazer looked newly pressed, her badge pinned precisely on her lapel. "Good morning, Dr. Carter," Rosa said softly, as Naomi passed through the metal detector. "Morning, Rosa. Ready?" Naomi's voice was warm, but focused. "Yes, ma'am. All my documentation is here." Rosa patted her purse. Further down the marble hallway, Earl and Laverne Jackson sat on a wooden bench, their Sunday best carefully arranged. Earl wore a crisp brown suit that spoke of decades of postal service dignity. Laverne's pearl necklace caught the light filtering through the high windows. They both stood as Naomi approached. "Dr. Carter," Earl said, extending his hand. "We've been praying for this day." "Thank you both for coming," Naomi replied, squeezing his hand warmly. "Your voices matter more than you know." Laverne adjusted her glasses, her chin high. "We've seen too much to stay quiet now." Mrs. Pennington stood slightly apart from the others, her silver hair swept into an elegant chignon. Her cream-colored suit looked expensive but somehow defensive, like armor. Her hands worried at the strap of her designer handbag. "Mrs. Pennington," Naomi said gently, "I appreciate you being here." "It's the right thing to do," Mrs. Pennington replied, though her voice wavered slightly. "I should have spoken up on the plane." "I won't make that mistake again." Security guards opened the heavy committee room doors. Television cameras swiveled to capture every entrance. Reporters scribbled in notepads, their whispers creating a steady undercurrent of speculation. The hearing room itself felt both grand and confining. Dark wood panels climbed the walls toward an ornate ceiling. Portraits of stern-faced former senators looked down on the proceedings. The air felt thick with anticipation. Senator Miriam Cole sat at the center of the raised dais, her silver reading glasses catching the light. Her deep blue suit and no-nonsense haircut projected authority without flash. She studied a document before her, making small notes with a silver pen. The airline's legal team occupied the front row of tables, their expensive suits and leather briefcases arranged with calculated precision. The lead counsel sat in the center, his silver hair and wire-rimmed glasses suggesting gravitas, his slight smirk suggesting contempt. He spread papers before him with theatrical confidence. Behind them, Victor Hale commanded his own space like a general surveying a battlefield. His tailored suit probably cost more than most people's monthly salary. His square jaw clenched and unclenched as he watched the room fill. When his eyes met Naomi's, they held neither fear nor shame, only cold calculation. Madison sat further back, half hidden behind a junior lawyer. Her uniform looked pressed, but her shoulders were tight with tension. She stared fixedly at the table before her, refusing to meet anyone's gaze. At precisely 10 a.m., Senator Cole lifted her gavel. The sharp crack brought immediate silence. "This hearing of the Senate Transportation Committee will now come to order," she announced, her voice clear and commanding. "We are here to investigate serious allegations regarding passenger treatment and corporate culture at National Airways, specifically surrounding an incident on Flight 2857 last month." She looked over her glasses at the packed room. "I remind everyone that this is a formal congressional hearing. Witnesses will speak under oath. Disruptions will not be tolerated." The lead counsel stood smoothly. "Madam Chair, before we begin, I'd like to register our objection to the scope of this hearing. This was a minor customer service incident that has been greatly exaggerated." "Objection noted," Senator Cole cut him off crisply. "And rejected. Dr. Carter, please step forward to be sworn in." Naomi rose and walked to the witness table. The wooden chair creaked slightly as she sat. A microphone stood ready before her, its red light blinking. "Please raise your right hand," the clerk instructed. "Do you swear to tell the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth, so help you God?" "I do." Naomi's voice carried clearly through the room. Senator Cole adjusted her papers. "Dr. Carter, please state your name and position for the record." "Dr. Naomi Carter, Administrator of the Federal Aviation Administration." "Dr. Carter, we're here to discuss events on Flight 2857. But first, I'd like to address something the airline has raised repeatedly in the media. Did you meet privately with flight attendant Madison Hale at the Meridian Hotel?" "Yes, Senator, I did." "And did you offer her protection in exchange for her testimony?" "I offered her protection in exchange for complete honesty about what happened on that flight and the corporate culture that enabled it," Naomi replied steadily. "I made no threats. I demanded no money. I simply gave her a chance to tell the truth without fear of retaliation." The lead counsel shifted in his seat, but Senator Cole pressed on. "The airline has released edited portions of that meeting that paint a very different picture. Dr. Carter, do you have anything to play for the committee?" Naomi looked up, her expression calm but resolute. "Yes." Naomi's counsel pressed a button on a sleek digital recorder. The room fell silent as voices filled the space. First Naomi's measured tones, then Madison's trembling responses. Unlike the choppy, threatening version the airline had released, this was the complete conversation. "I'm not here to destroy you, Madison," Naomi's recorded voice stated clearly. "I'm here to address a system that made you think it was acceptable to strike a passenger, any passenger, because of their race. You have a choice: help me expose the truth, or go down protecting those who taught you this behavior was okay." Madison's recorded voice cracked. "They told us how to handle certain passengers. Write them up as aggressive if they complained. Use specific phrases. Uncle Victor said the airline would always back us up." The recording continued, revealing Naomi's careful offers of protection in exchange for honesty. No threats. No demands for money. Just a clear path to telling the truth. When the playback ended, the hearing room buzzed with whispers. The lead counsel's face had lost its smug expression. Victor Hale's jaw muscle twitched visibly. Senator Cole adjusted her glasses. The committee notes that this recording differs substantially from the edited version released to the media. She turned to Rosa. Ms. Alvarez, please step forward to be sworn in. Rosa walked to the witness table, her navy blazer crisp, her steps measured despite her obvious nervousness. After taking the oath, she sat straight-backed in the chair Naomi had vacated. Ms. Alvarez, you were working Flight 2857 as a junior flight attendant. Please tell us what you witnessed, Senator Cole directed. Rosa leaned slightly toward the microphone. Her hands were clasped tightly in her lap, but her voice held steady. I saw Madison check Dr. Carter's boarding pass repeatedly, though she didn't check any other first-class passengers. She ignored Dr. Carter's requests for water. When Dr. Carter refused to give up her meal, Madison. Rosa took a deep breath. Madison leaned in close and slapped her across the face. What happened after the incident? Senator Cole asked. We were instructed to write up Dr. Carter as combative and disruptive, Rosa continued. Her voice quivered but didn't break. The supervisors gave us specific phrases to use. They always give us these phrases for certain passengers. They told us to say Dr. Carter had refused crew instructions and created a security concern. Did you comply with these instructions? No, Senator. Rosa's chin lifted slightly. I couldn't. What I saw was assault, plain and simple. And it wasn't the first time I'd seen passengers treated differently based on their race. The lead counsel stood. Objection, Madam Chair. This witness is making broad, unsubstantiated allegations. Overruled, Senator Cole cut in. The witness is relating her direct observations. Please continue, Ms. Alvarez. Deshaun Brooks took the stand next, his management consultant's suit as precisely arranged as his testimony. After being sworn in, he pulled out his phone. I was in seat 4C, he explained. When I heard the commotion, I started recording. I knew something wasn't right. He looked directly at the committee. That night, I made copies. I sent one to Dr. Carter's office immediately. I had a feeling the airline might try to make the video disappear. Please play your recording for the committee, Senator Cole instructed. The video projected onto the hearing room screens showed exactly what the witnesses had described. Madison's aggressive lean in, the sharp crack of the slap, Naomi's dignified response. The audio was crystal clear, including Madison's muttered slur before the strike. Gasps echoed through the room. A reporter's pen clattered to the floor. Victor Hale's face had gone from confident to ashen. He leaned forward, whispering urgently to the lead counsel, whose hands were now shuffling papers with noticeably less assurance. The airline's careful narrative was unraveling thread by thread. Their edited hotel clip, their claims of Naomi being combative, their attempts to paint Madison as the victim, all of it crumbled in the face of unvarnished truth. Senator Cole surveyed the room, her expression stern but satisfied. Her eyes settled on the elegant figure in cream-colored wool. Mrs. Pennington? Mrs. Pennington stood slowly, smoothing her skirt with trembling hands. She had been silent on the plane, watching from the seat next to Naomi as events unfolded. Now, she walked toward the witness table with the careful dignity of her 73 years. The clerk held up the Bible. Do you swear to tell the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth? So help you God? Mrs. Pennington's pearl necklace caught the light as she raised her right hand. I do. Mrs. Pennington settled into the witness chair, her silver hair neatly styled, her posture proper but uncomfortable. She adjusted her reading glasses with slightly trembling fingers. "Mrs. Pennington," Senator Cole began, "you were seated next to Dr. Carter in first class. Please share what you observed." The retired schoolteacher's voice wavered at first, then steadied. "I was there for all of it, and I'm ashamed to say I did nothing." She turned to look directly at Naomi. "Dr. Carter, I want to apologize. I saw how Madison treated you from the moment you sat down. The constant checking of your boarding pass, the way she ignored your requests while attending to everyone else immediately." She dabbed at her eyes with a tissue. "I saw the slap. I heard what Madison said before she struck you. And I stayed silent." Mrs. Pennington's hands tightened in her lap. "I've spent my life teaching children to stand up against bullying, to speak up when they see wrong. But when the moment came, I failed to follow my own lessons." Her voice grew stronger. "I'm here now because silence makes us complicit. What happened on that flight was assault, pure and simple, motivated by nothing but the color of Dr. Carter's skin." Senator Cole nodded. "Thank you for your candor. Mr. and Mrs. Jackson, please step forward." Earl and Laverne Jackson approached together, their dignity evident in every measured step. Earl's pressed shirt and Laverne's neat dress spoke of a lifetime of facing the world with unshakable grace. After being sworn in, they sat side by side at the witness table. "We were in coach," Earl began, his deep voice carrying clearly. "But we had a clear view of first class during boarding. We saw Madison's behavior change completely when she reached Dr. Carter's row." Laverne picked up the thread. "We've flown enough to know what good service looks like. This wasn't that. This was deliberate disrespect, building and building until it exploded into violence." "Did anyone from the airline contact you after the incident?" Senator Cole asked. "Yes," Earl replied. "A representative called to suggest perhaps we hadn't seen things clearly from our vantage point. Offered us travel vouchers if we'd sign a statement saying we were uncertain about what happened." "And your response?" Laverne's chin lifted. "We told them we know exactly what we saw. We've seen it too many times before, just usually more subtle. But a slap? That's not subtle. That's hatred showing its true face." The room fell silent. Naomi turned in her chair, looking at Madison seated several rows back. The flight attendant's makeup couldn't hide her red-rimmed eyes or the tension in her jaw. Their gazes met. "Ms. Hale," Naomi said, her voice carrying clearly but gently through the quiet chamber. "Tell the truth now, and I will stand between you and those who used you. You don't have to protect them anymore." Madison stood slowly, her uniform perfectly pressed, but her hands shaking. She moved to the center aisle, then paused, glancing at her uncle. Victor Hale's face had hardened into a warning mask, but Madison turned away from him. "I want to testify," she said, barely above a whisper. After being sworn in, Madison sank into the witness chair. She took several deep breaths, then began speaking, her words tumbling out as if a dam had broken. "I slapped Dr. Carter. I said horrible things to her. And it wasn't the first time I'd treated passengers that way." She wiped at her eyes. "During training, we were taught certain code phrases, ways to write up passengers who didn't belong in first class. We were told the airline would always back us up if we used these specific terms." Senator Cole leaned forward. "Who provided this training?" "Supervisors, senior crew members, and my uncle, Victor Hale. He made it clear that keeping certain passengers in their place was part of maintaining our airline's image." Madison's voice cracked. "After I slapped Dr. Carter, I panicked. Uncle Victor said he'd make it all go away. He had his PR team edit the recording from the hotel to make Dr. Carter look like the aggressor. He told me exactly what to say, how to play the victim. She turned to face Naomi directly. "I'm so sorry. I let them use me to hurt people. I knew it was wrong, but I was afraid of losing everything. My job, my family support, my whole world." Her shoulders slumped. "But living with this lie has been worse than losing any of that." The hearing room erupted. Reporters scribbled frantically. Cameras clicked. Congressional staffers hurried through side doors with urgent expressions. Victor Hale's face had gone from warning to ashen as he watched his carefully constructed narrative collapse. Senator Cole's gavel cracked sharply against the desk. "Order!" She waited for the room to quiet, then spoke with steel in her voice. "Based on the testimony and evidence presented today, this committee will be making immediate referrals to the Attorney General's Office for Criminal Investigation into assault, conspiracy, witness tampering, and obstruction of justice." She gestured to several stern-faced individuals entering through a side door. "I see the Attorney General's staff has already arrived. Mr. Hale, I suggest you remain in the building. There are some questions they'll want to ask you." The gavel cracked again as Victor Hale slumped in his seat. All traces of his earlier confidence vanished. Staff ushers moved purposefully toward him, their expressions leaving no doubt about what would happen next. The corridor outside the hearing room hummed with controlled chaos. Phones buzzed with alerts as journalists fired off rapid updates. Through a side door, federal agents escorted Victor Hale and two senior airline executives, their faces tight with barely contained panic. Victor's perfectly tailored suit couldn't mask his defeated posture as handcuffs clicked into place. Inside the main chamber, staffers passed urgent messages to Senator Cole. She scanned them quickly, then addressed the packed room. "We have confirmation that federal agents are executing search warrants at airline headquarters and seizing relevant documents." Her voice carried the weight of authority. No more buried complaints. No more coordinated cover-ups. The airline's PR team huddled in the corner, phones pressed to their ears. Within minutes, they released a statement that reflected their shattered confidence. "In light of today's revelations, we acknowledge serious failures in passenger treatment and corporate oversight. We will cooperate fully with all investigations and accept responsibility for systematic discrimination." Rosa sat quietly in her row, hands clasped tightly in her lap. Senator Cole motioned her forward. "Ms. Alvarez, please approach." Rosa stood, smoothing her uniform skirt with trembling fingers. "This committee recognizes your courage in coming forward. Your airline is hereby ordered to reinstate you with full back pay and benefits. Furthermore, you will receive federal whistleblower protections." Rosa's shoulders relaxed slightly, for the first time in weeks. At the main table, Naomi reviewed documents being placed before her. Her administrative leave was officially lifted, her authority fully restored, but her attention fixed on a particular name in the papers, Deputy Administrator James Morton, who had quietly worked to undermine her during the investigation. Evidence showed his private meetings with airline executives, his attempts to discredit her testimony. "Deputy Morton is relieved of duties effective immediately," Senator Cole announced, pending a thorough investigation into his connections with airline leadership. She turned to Naomi. "Dr. Carter, I believe you have some recommendations for passenger protections?" Naomi stood, her cream-colored suit crisp despite the long day. "Yes, Senator. Simple, clear rules that can't be buried in fine print." She laid out 3 core proposals. First, any crew member who physically assaults a passenger is immediately removed from duty. No exceptions, no waiting for reviews. Second, every cabin must display clear hotline numbers for reporting incidents, connected to independent monitors, not airline management. Third, regular audits by outside observers who answer to passenger advocacy groups, not corporate boards. The airline's counsel shifted uncomfortably. "Senator, implementing such measures would require basic human decency," Senator Cole cut in. "The time for cost concerns over safety is over." She turned back to Naomi. "Continue, Dr. Carter." "We need a culture change," Naomi said firmly. "No more unofficial codes for profiling passengers. No more teaching crew to target people who don't belong. Every traveler deserves dignity, regardless of their seat assignment or appearance." Earl and Laverne Jackson nodded from their seats. Mrs. Pennington dabbed at her eyes again. Madison, still at the witness table, stared at her folded hands. Senator Cole consulted briefly with her staff, then addressed the room. "This committee will draft legislation incorporating Dr. Carter's recommendations, with additional oversight provisions." She fixed the airline representatives with a stern gaze. "You may begin implementing these changes voluntarily, or wait for them to become law. Choose wisely." Through the afternoon, the implications rippled outward. News channels ran breaking updates on Victor Hale's arrest. Social media exploded with clips from the testimony. Other airlines rushed to announce their own anti-discrimination initiatives, hoping to get ahead of the coming reforms. As the hearing room slowly emptied, Naomi gathered her papers. The weight of the past weeks showed in the careful way she moved, but her eyes were clear and determined. She paused by Madison's chair. "Thank you for telling the truth," she said quietly. Madison looked up, tears tracking her makeup. "I'm so sorry. For everything." "Make it right by helping change things," Naomi replied, then moved on. In the marble hallway, Rosa waited uncertainly. Naomi approached her with a warm smile. "Would you join me in my office? There's something I'd like to discuss." An hour later, they sat across from each other in Naomi's FAA office. The city lights were coming on outside the windows, casting a gentle glow across the room. Rosa held a cup of tea, her posture gradually relaxing, as Naomi outlined her idea. "We need to completely rebuild crew training," Naomi explained. "Not just rules and procedures, but the fundamental approach to passenger dignity. Who better to help design that than someone who saw the problems from the inside and had the courage to speak up?" Rosa set her cup down carefully. "You want me to help create the new training program? You understand both sides, the pressures crew members face, and the importance of standing up for what's right." Naomi leaned forward. "We can make real change, Rosa. Not just policies, but hearts and minds." Rosa straightened, a slow smile spreading across her face. After weeks of fear and uncertainty, she finally saw a clear path forward. She met Naomi's gaze, two warriors who had fought the good fight together. "When do we start?" she asked simply. The familiar hum of jet engines filled the boarding area as Naomi adjusted her navy blazer and checked her boarding pass one last time. Gate A7, first class, seat 3A. Everything in order, just as it should be. She stepped onto the jet bridge, her heels clicking softly against the corrugated floor. The morning sun streamed through the small windows, casting long shadows that danced along the walls. Her heart beat a little faster as she approached the aircraft door. Not from anxiety this time, but from quiet anticipation. The lead flight attendant greeted her with a professional nod. "Good morning. Welcome aboard." Simple, courteous, the same tone used for every passenger. Naomi smiled, noting how different it felt from that day months ago. As she entered the first-class cabin, her eyes caught the new placards mounted prominently near the galley. Clean, straightforward text outlined passenger rights and reporting procedures. No legal jargon, no fine print, just clear language about dignity, respect, and accountability. Below the text was a QR code linking directly to the Independent Monitoring Office, along with a toll-free number in bold digits. Naomi stored her carry-on, and settled into 3A, smoothing her slacks as she sat. Other passengers filtered in, the usual morning business crowd with their laptops and briefcases. A gentleman across the aisle gave her a respectful nod. She recognized him from the hearing coverage, but he didn't make a fuss. Progress, she thought, comes in small moments too. The cabin filled gradually, conversation humming at a pleasant level. Naomi noticed how the flight attendants moved with purpose, but without tension, their interactions natural and unforced. No double-checking of boarding passes, no subtle signals between crew members about watching certain passengers. Just professional service, evenly delivered. A young black flight attendant approached her seat, carrying a tray of water glasses. Her name tag read Jasmine, and her uniform was crisp and neat. She placed a glass on Naomi's tray table with steady hands and a genuine smile. "Dr. Carter," Jasmine said softly. "Thank you." The words carried weight beyond their simplicity. "Thank you, Jasmine," Naomi replied, using her name deliberately, acknowledging her as a person, not just a uniform. As Jasmine moved to serve other passengers, Naomi noticed a small training certification card tucked into the service station. Rosa's signature was at the bottom. She'd been promoted to lead the airline's new passenger dignity training program. The sight brought a warm feeling to Naomi's chest. She thought about Madison, who had sent a handwritten letter of apology after the hearing, not asking for forgiveness, but acknowledging her actions and describing her community service work with local civil rights organizations. The letter now sat in Naomi's desk drawer, a reminder that change was possible when people faced truth honestly. The Jacksons had become regular speakers at airline industry conferences, sharing their experiences with quiet dignity that commanded attention. Their testimony had inspired other passengers to come forward, creating a wave of accountability that spread beyond one airline to the entire industry. Mrs. Pennington, true to her word, had channeled her remorse into action. She'd joined a passenger advocacy group and helped draft some of the clear language policies now displayed in every cabin. Making it right, she'd told Naomi, means doing the work, not just feeling bad. The captain's voice came over the intercom, warm and professional. "Good morning from the flight deck. We're looking at clear skies and smooth conditions today." Naomi watched the ground crew through her window, their movements precise and coordinated in the morning light. A flight attendant helped an elderly passenger store her bag. No hint of impatience or condescension in the interaction. Small moments, building a better culture, one gesture at a time. The safety demonstration began, and Naomi noticed how the crew made eye contact with every section of the cabin, not just certain rows. Their movements were confident and inclusive. Rosa's training influence was evident in these subtle but important details. As they taxied to the runway, Naomi caught sight of her reflection in the window. The woman looking back at her seemed lighter somehow, though not less determined. The fight wasn't over. It never really would be. But the landscape had shifted. Real change had taken root. The engines spooled up, that familiar surge of power pushing them forward. Naomi felt the gentle pressure as the nose lifted, the ground falling away beneath them. They climbed through wispy morning clouds, the cabin peaceful and secure. She thought about all the passengers who would board planes today across the country. Each one would see those clear policy statements, would feel the shift in how they were treated, would know they had recourse if something went wrong. Not perfect yet, but better. Measurably, meaningfully better. The seatbelt sign chimed off. Sunlight streamed through the windows, painting the cabin in warm morning gold. Naomi relaxed her shoulders, feeling the tension of the past months finally begin to release. She took a deep, slow breath and let it out. Not with triumph or fanfare, just profound, hard-earned peace. Outside her window, the sky opened wide and bright, clouds parting to reveal an endless blue horizon. The light caught the wing, making it gleam like a promise kept, like a new day dawning clear and true. I hope you enjoyed that story. Please share it with your friends and subscribe so that you do not miss out on the next one. In the meantime, I have handpicked 2 stories for you that I think you will enjoy. Have a great day.